So we are going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Elizabeth Aloni, and I'm with Schneps Media. Schneps Media is the largest local media company in the New York metro area. We publish over 80 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, Staten Island, Westchester, Long Island, the East End, Philadelphia, and now Palm Beach, Florida. And today we are so thrilled to bring you this very important webinar talking about best daycare and preschool philosophies for your child. You know, early childhood is such an important time in the development of our children. And today we're joined by two experts to help us understand preschool and daycare philosophies and how to select the right one for your child. So let me go ahead and introduce our panelists. First, I'm very happy to introduce Lynne Mueller, who is the Director of Learning at Vivvi. Lynne works to continuously develop and expand Vivvi's inquiry-based learning model. She oversees the implementation of curriculum across the Vivvi network of campus and in-home programs. Lynne's work with Vivvi's teachers and children supports each student's potential as a curious and motivated learner. She has a rich and diverse experience in early childhood education, most notably as Director of Education at the International Preschools. Welcome, Lynne.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And next, please welcome Gretchen Richer, Director of Family Experience at Vivvi. Gretchen works closely with the school team to create a seamless transition into Vivvi's program for families and assure that each moment of their journey is met with all the necessary information and resources. Gretchen also commemorates each family milestone in conjunction with the school team and oversees parent-facing communications and programming. Prior to joining Vivvi, Gretchen oversaw the design and delivery of Union Square Hospitality Group's internal and external learning and development programs. Welcome, Gretchen.
Thank you for having us today. So excited.
Absolutely, absolutely. So please go ahead and share your screen and share with us some of the great information that you have for us today.
I will do that right now. Okay, making it official. All right, well, Elizabeth, thank you so much. On behalf of New York Family and Schneps Media, we are so happy to be here today. And of course, get started on what we know will be a really great discussion on a topic that's near and dear to our hearts. Before we begin, I just want to share that Vivvi itself as an organization is on a mission to reinvent childcare and early learning for today's families. And we're doing so in a couple different ways. In New York, our 3 campuses and growing specialize in learning and care for children 6 weeks to 5 years. And then nationally, our in-home programs, which really take our teachers and everything about the school model and place it inside your home, expands our coverage to meet families literally wherever they are. I'm also the parent of a 4-year-old, Noah. You can see here, he attends Vivvi currently, and so the content is certainly on top of my mind as a mother as well. And before I turn it over to Lynne, who's really going to talk through some of these philosophies, I'll just share a little bit more about our agenda and some things to consider outside of the school philosophies as you research early childhood learning programs. So we're going to start with just thinking holistically about early learning in your family. What else are you probably considering and should consider in addition to the right daycare and childcare learning philosophies? We will then move into those philosophies. What are the common approaches? Lynne will really share with us those common approaches you'll see in many daycare and preschool settings. We'll share a little bit about our learning model, the inquiry learning model, and how we take some of all of those best practices and combine them into our school. And then, of course, we'll leave some time for Q&A. And now just kind of starting top of mind, really having a global idea of thinking through your family's learning experience and your family. Everyone is unique, everyone's situation is unique, but I think a lot of these factors are important to take into consideration. So thinking about the logistics, just want to name that geography is a really important thing to consider. I think many of our attendees are from the tri-state area, but really making sure that the things that you're interested in are in your geographical area. So you might fall in love with a particular approach or particular school or particular style, but it might be out of your area, or the commute time might be unrealistic. So just matching that geography up with your needs. Other things to consider: budget and offerings. Preschool and childcare centers vary in pricing, and you want to consider what's realistic within your family budget, and then what all do you get for the offerings that the schools have. And then your particular schedule and needs, both for you and for your family. Some preschools offer a really fantastic learning environment and philosophy, but potentially are closed for large chunks of time in the summer or the holidays, or they might not offer before or after care. So in addition to the learning style, you want to understand, how does that learning take place across the year? One thing that Vivvi does that's a really awesome combination is that we do have a very specific learning approach, but we are open for extended hours to be flexible for our working parents' needs. And then be open to all philosophies and trust your gut. All of the philosophies that we're going to talk about today have really wonderful components to them, but likely you're also going to be considering a combination of the space, the physical space, the faculty, the team, the community, both inside the school and the parent community. They'll all play really important factors in choosing the school. So making sure you feel good about them, that your gut feels good about them. School tours, faculty meetings, meeting with the head of school are all really great ways to not only gauge the learning approach and understand more about the curriculum, but really understand the quality of the care and the culture. And from that, I'll turn it over to Lynne.
Thanks, Gretchen. First, welcome everyone. Love talking about my favorite topic, about early childhood philosophies. And I just want to say, before we get into it, you might have your heart set on a specific school or a specific philosophy. You might have heard stuff from your friends, things that you have read. But before you close the book to other schools, you just never know. Keep an open heart, because by the end of this session, first, you might say, this is exactly what I want. Or you might say, some of these other philosophies sound really good. I think I'm going to look at them. So when we talk about early childhood, we talk about, the foundation. So research shows that play is the work of young children. That's really how they learn all about the world around them. And that work involves all areas of learning. So, but even though it's play-based, because they might say, oh, they're just playing all day, the majority of schools who apply this concept have structure built into their day. If it's morning time and afternoon time. So play-based is not, you won't see ditto sheets, you won't see workbooks, you won't see children just sitting at desk. Those are things that are more common in what, you might read about in a traditional school approach that is not in a play-based foundation.
And so, Lynne, most of what the philosophies that you'll talk about today are most play-based and non-traditional, as you would say.
This is based on years of research from, all kinds of philosophers, such as Piaget and Vygotsky and all those people that you might have heard about in school. And, what the experts sort of espouse to is that play is where, children should be at these young years, and it should not be a watered down kindergarten. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to focus on play-based learning.
Perfect. And I know if you've got young children on the line, even as a 4-year-old, to even imagine him sitting at a desk all day would probably be the antithesis of the experience that I'd want. So that's really great to know.
So what I'm going to talk about, these are some common approaches that you've probably heard about: Montessori, Reggio, Waldorf, language immersion, and inquiry learning model. So we're going to start off with the Montessori approach, which is the next slide. What's the Reggio approach? Oh no, it's the Montessori approach.
I get a little excited. My clicking.
So Montessori, what is Montessori? Montessori schools, they focus on supporting the natural needs of each child in all areas of development. It is hands-on learning, but it's specifically designed so each child has the opportunity to work and develop to their potential. So it's pretty individual. It's at their own time and their own pace. The activities, the materials, though, are teacher directed. So they put out the materials, they look at the children, they feel, see where they are developmentally, and then they determine what materials the children will be used. What's really interesting about Montessori is that it's mixed age group. So, you might have a 2-year-old and 3 and 4-year-old in one group, because it's not about their age, it is about their development. Although it's child-led, that the teacher sort of lets them develop as they see fit with these activities, it's very structured based on the materials. And teachers are certified in Montessori. So just want to say, if you're thinking of Montessori school, that's a really great question to ask. Does your teachers have an extra certificate, because it's after a master's program, just in the Montessori approach to education?
So a lot of schools out there use a lot of the Montessori philosophies, but may not be the certified Montessori school.
Absolutely. And so that's something, I was going to talk about this later, but, lots of schools say, we're a Montessori school, we're a Reggio school, but it's really, what they say and what they do is it's not always exactly the same. So when you go on your tours and you speak to each school, you can get a sense if this school is really a Montessori school or a Reggio school.
Lynn, I'll probably ask this on each approach. Can you name some of the benefits of choosing a school like this? And then thinking about your child as a learner, what children might thrive in an environment like this?
Montessori is really good for children all children need structure. Some children might need a little bit more structure than others. They need to know what comes next. So this approach is it's a great way for children to do it. It also might be for a child who might be a precocious 2-year-old who, you think, there's some areas where my child is a little bit sophisticated, it's more advanced. This approach might work because this will allow the child to sort of move to where they're at, and continue to grow to their potential.
And then some benefits related to a Montessori approach.
I think it's I think all of these approaches are great. I think it prepares children for kindergarten and beyond, and it really dives into cognitive skills and development of a child. I think the cognitive is stressed over the social.
Thank you. That's great to know. Shall we move on to Reggio?
Absolutely.
All right.
So the Reggio approach started in Italy. That is where it came from, and then it was adopted to this country. So in Italy, they do things like they use caves to do explorations, and rivers. It's just a different system. So of course, in New York and in the United States, they don't do it. But in all Reggio schools, they use something called a project-based approach. What is a project-based approach? It's an approach where they take a topic and children can study it for a month, or they might study it for a year. There was a study from Italy where they talked about bats and learned about bats for an entire year. The curriculum topics are driven by the interest of the students. So this approach is teacher facilitated versus teacher directed, which is more of a Montessori approach. The environment is very important to the Reggio approach. It's called the third teacher. They've coined that phrase. So what is the third teacher? So besides children learning, through materials, what's important in the Reggio approach is, their interactions with friends and materials. So everything in the classroom will fit the child's needs. There will be designated centers, because that really helps to define structure for children as they go on. There's signage all over. Signage, there's words and there's pictures throughout every classroom, to support reading. It's sort of an organic way to learn, I would say. And the artwork is at eye level. So children can really see their accomplishments and they can see what their friends do. And that really goes into strengthening community, because community is a very important part of the Reggio approach. We're all citizens of the world, and we all have empathy and we take care of each other. Documentation of the work is also extremely important to Reggio. Documentation, just what they do is they take photographs of every single step of the way of every project, and that is to emphasize the process. Process is much more important than the end product. So children can really see and celebrate what they've learned and how they've scaffolded their learning and where they go to at the end of the day. So things to consider when you go to a Reggio school is the environment. They use natural materials are really a big part of it. Projects are the curriculum. Of course, skills and concepts. All skills and concepts are integrated into those projects, but it's project-based. And then the environment might look a little bit different to you than a Montessori environment.
And then thinking about your child as a learner, what child might benefit from this type of approach?
I think children I think this is I think this is more of like a philosophy also for families. Do you want your child to really tap into their thinking and their interests and be creative and sort of think a little outside the box? If that's what you want, I think that's the right approach for you. And also the environment. What kind of environment do you want your child to be in? And if they're creative and they're artistic and they love using all kinds of mediums, to draw and paint and glue and collage and things like that.
I want to bring up a question that came up because I do think there's a little bit of clarification and I think I know the answer, but I'd love for you to expound on it. So one of our audience members asked, bats for a whole year, isn't this counterproductive to being a well-rounded individual? And it's not that they're necessarily studying bats, but you're bringing a mathematical component into it. You're bringing a scientific component.
Exactly. Most schools do not do the same curriculum for a whole year, or they'll do as a secondary curriculum. Throughout that curriculum, all domains of learning are included. So, there's the literacy, part of it. So we're talking about bats. Maybe we should write stories about bats and do research. Research is something that's really important for later on. And then from learning about bats, maybe they start learning about I don't know anything about bats, so I'm going up here on a ledge.
They're learning about nighttime and daytime. They're learning about the cycles of the moon, right? They're bringing in math, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's considered an animal, but other animals or creatures that live in the night versus the day. There's also experiments, science experiments. So although it starts out with bats, it really can it branches off to many other areas. So at the end of the year, it might be a curriculum about the natural environment or creatures in the natural environment. It's not just specifically bats per se.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Let's head on over to the world of Waldorf.
So Waldorf School has an emphasis on creativity, imagination, and disconnecting from technology. So most schools do not use screen time at school, but this one has made they never use technology. And it's in a home-like environment, so it's very cozy. And they do that because they want to bridge the gap between the home and the school environment. Children are comfortable and they stay motivated about learning. Oral language is a hallmark of this. So what's oral language? Teachers use a lot of questioning techniques to support children answering back, thinking, and talking. And also, besides the expressive part, the receptive part, understand. Expressive and receptive language are so important for learning now and on. And there's a lot of practical skill building in the curriculum. So they might have a unit on sewing. I don't know if anyone here knows how to sew, but you used to be able to sew years ago. And sewing is so great for, fine motor and spatial relationships. They also do things like setting the table every day for one-to-one correspondence and cooking lots of meals. So, things to consider if you're thinking about Waldorf. They definitely focus on independent living skills, whatever those are for every age. And the children and the teachers stay together for more than 1 year. because it really creates this home-like family environment. And the advantage to that is teachers really know their children. They start at whatever age, 1-year-olds until 4-year-olds. They have a much different kind of connection than those children who have teachers who, they have different teachers every year.
And Lynn, would you say that Waldorf as a strict philosophy in this area is not as common, but as an incorporation of components of preschools are inside?
It is not that common. I mean, I know of in Manhattan, there's just one school. There might be others across the country, but a lot of these different criteria are incorporated in other schools, and all of them are very important and valid for young children and learning.
Thank you.
Now we're going to talk about language immersion. So if you're thinking of exposing your children to 2 languages, there's 2 different approaches to this, so just keep it in mind. So some schools, whatever the language, use one language in the morning for all their work and all their time, and then they use another language in the afternoon. Or every other day, one day they'll be, the second language, one day they'll be English. So that's one approach. Another approach is all instruction every single day is in the language of concentration. So you might say, how is my child going to understand that? I have seen it in action because I actually, was involved in the school with this. And children are just, they're sponges. And, if they keep on, it's all about repetition and using body language, and children do get it when it is just a total immersion program. Now, if you're considering a language immersion program, you should also have, think about what philosophy this school is using, because every single language immersion program uses different philosophies. So you can go back to those other philosophies and see how they are doing it. Ask about how the second language is taught. If it's a traditional way, if it's a more play-based way, and the instructional techniques used, and also if the teachers, who are teaching the second language are native born speakers, not that it really matters, it's just more, information, or, if it's also their second language.
Thank you. Good things to consider.
And then we come to the Vivvi approach. So what Vivvi has done is they've taken the best of all of these highly regarded philosophies and tied them together to create the inquiry model. So I'm just going to give you some examples. So, at Vivvi, like at Reggio schools, each topic that children study, they do it for an extended period of time, not for a year, they do it for about a month. And the reason they do that is because at Vivvi, we really feel that really to support learning on a deeper way, you need to have more than like a week of doing something. Some schools will have, what we call an in the box curriculum. One week they do dinosaurs, next week they do spring. How much do children learn in 5 days about dinosaurs versus if they did dinosaurs for a month? I'm sure they can get much more information and much more knowledge that they could use later. And all of this, higher level thinking and knowledge really supports later on in kindergarten and beyond sophisticated concepts that they need. And like all the programs, all of the what we call domains of learning, if it's, the academic ones, literacy science, math, and also social emotional, they're all integrated throughout the day. So in this model, children have a voice in the topics they learn about. I mean, that's really important. And that's part of, that's like the Reggio approach in a way. And, we don't use an in the box curriculum, as I said, it's more about creating curriculum every month. And like Waldorf, oral language is a really key component. So our teachers at Vivvi are trained to use what we call inquiry open-ended questioning versus closed-ended questions. So for instance, rather than saying, what color shirt are you wearing today? The child doesn't know what color shirt it is. They're not going to be able to answer that question and they won't feel successful. We might say, oh, I see you're wearing a red shirt. So if they don't know it's red, now they do. Let's go find some other red things. And through that kind of inquiry, questioning, open-ended, they will understand by the end of the day what red is versus, and feel really good about themselves. Because it's very important, Vivvi, that every day children leave school and they feel successful as a learner and a thinker. So the best way for me to explain that model is by showing you this. So this is how it works. So, at the top you see, children are playing and teachers observe what they're doing. And as they're observing, they're listening to the questions that they ask each other. They're observing what materials are interesting to each other. They're looking at what skills they might still need some help with, such as, maybe some are having a hard time putting the Lego pieces together. So they've got to work a little bit more on fine motor, or maybe they have children that, are having a hard time self-regulating. So maybe like we'll add some Play-Doh activities, which are really soothing and calming. And then they take this information and then they use something that we have developed called the learning domains, which is all of these areas of learning, or some philosophies call them developmental milestones. And then they create activities based on children's interests and what they need. And then we create a web. So on the right side of the page, you'll see a web, and I'm just going to talk about it. So this happened in a class. I think they were like 2 and 3 years old. And next door, there were infants. And every day they would be talking about these babies, and they would be, wanting to know their names and what they ate. So the teacher said, maybe we should create a curriculum about babies, because this was such an interest. So that's exactly what they did. So, in every single center of learning, they created activities with the children based on this theme. So, for instance, in the sensory area, they were washing baby clothes in their baby bathing station, which is the name that the children call this. They named it the baby station, and then they did signage and they wrote out, this is what it is. They used Play-Doh to manipulate things, for size, which was definitely a mathematical skill. In terms of gross motor, they started moving like a baby. I mean, gross motor is as important as anything else for the brain and your vestibular system. So they did a lot of things about a baby. In science, this is one of the favorite projects. They wanted to see what baby food tasted like. So they took regular food and they made it into baby food. And then, so for instance, they did it with carrots, and then pureed carrots. And then they did, they did some voting. They did some surveys to see what they liked better. Was it the baby food, or was it the big kid food that they were eating? And there was a lot of math, and there were a lot of graphs going involved. And of course, for fine motor, young children, besides, they need to write, besides holding a pencil, like how did they learn? So, they were dressing babies. When I say babies, they're doll babies. They weren't real babies. We didn't give them that responsibility. They were buttoning things, and they were pulling zippers. And also they were making self-portraits of themselves, which has so many assessment tools in it. And also they were they were doing some pictures of the babies, and then they were comparing the two. So this curriculum, when we talk about the length of time, so, the goal was, let's do this for a couple of weeks. Well, these children were so interested in this that the teachers really couldn't stop this curriculum, and they were learning so much. So they did it for about 6 weeks. And then they started moving on to something else. Probably the children could have did it longer, but it was time to move on. So this is exactly how this works. And at Vivvi, what we call these webs, of what we do every month, we don't keep this to ourselves. We feel it's really important to share it with parents. So parents really know what their children are doing. So when, child gets home from school, and of course you say, so what'd you do today? And 9 times out of 10 times they'll say, nothing. You can go to this web and say, well, I see, in your in your the baby bathing station, that there are clothes. Did you wash clothes today or something like that? So this is a really important tool that we use. Teachers are trained in how to do it. And it's really, it works and it makes sense. And children are really excited about learning.
It's so sweet. I mean, listening to this, what a sweet, sweet way to have the children learn all of these different things and something that they're excited about. And I can't stop smiling. I have to share
And I have to tell you, when this was happening, I happened to be at this school that was doing at this campus a lot. And I just loved going in the classroom because every time I went in, it was wonderful. It was wonderful to see how engaged these children were in the learning process, and the families also. They were loving it too. So, these are the different approaches, play-based approaches that we've spoken about. And, I hope that this information, helps you start your journey for looking for another school, a school for your child. And, now it's just the fun part, going on tours, looking at the different philosophies and seeing what works for you. So I'm going to pass it back to Gretchen.
And Elizabeth, I know you have been probably looking through some questions too, if there are anything you want to start with.
Melinda brought up a good point of concern where, some of the schools are still virtual. First of all, I guess, tell me how Vivvi is handling their tours. But, what is your recommendation in that instance where there may be schools that are just doing virtual tours? What do you recommend to parents?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will also say that most of, especially in the New York City area, most of the schools, their jurisdiction is Department of Health. And right now the advisory has been to keep things as virtual and as no parents necessarily coming in for the tours or the meetings. We do a combination of a lot of things. Lynn, I know you're going to step in at some point. We will do virtual tours where we have a school experience coordinator whose job it is really to literally, figuratively hold the hands of the parents the entire way of their journey, and the tours start with them. Along that journey, it's really important for them to walk into the classrooms, to show you what's happening inside the classrooms, to see what the children are doing, to see what the environment looks like, to have an opportunity to meet with the head of school, to meet with a faculty member. So in addition to seeing it, and obviously being in the space is the best way to see it, but visually, you've got a lot of people that you can talk to as specific resources. And Lynn, I'll have you add on.
No, I mean, I'm just gonna say, it's definitely a different way to get information, and it's not the best way, but I mean, our families really, get to see the school. We bring it to the school to life through these tours with an iPad. I mean, the school experience coordinator, she just walks through every single classroom. She shows you everything that's going on, and then of course support from everyone else to give you, to answer any questions. I mean, a school should be available to you if you have questions. So there should be layers of people that you can meet with to get all the information you need before you decide to sign up for a school.
And oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gretchen.
No, that's okay. In addition to the resources, I think it's really great too. We've connected our families with other families who have either started the journey and are older now, or have a very similar experience to those prospective families. And sometimes it's nice to just get the Vivvi experience, and then get an authentic experience that a parent is going through.
I love that recommendation. I think that's a really nice way to, you get the experience yourself and speak to the different people like you're saying, and get that the feeling from it and the information from it. And then you also can match that with the parents, so with other parents. So I think that's a really great idea. And speaking along the lines of asking questions, Anna wanted to know, what questions do I ask? Outside of what your philosophy is, what are some key questions a parent should ask?
I guess, you want to know their health and safety protocol, what that is. I think that's important. I mean, by now, all schools sort of have a plan, every school is different, how often do they contact you in terms of, if something goes awry, if your child gets injured. Also, how often does the school communicate with you? So
And what channel?
And what channel? So at Vivvi, we have something called a Bright Wheel app, and every day teachers, communicate with the families about various things. So if it's for an infant, it's different. It's about when they're eating and diapering, and also about activities versus a preschool classroom where they provide daily updates about what the children did at school. So, because especially if you're not going to be going in this school, that's important about updates. You also want to ask about teachers' credentials. Every school is different. Do they have a master's degree in early childhood education? Are they in a work study program? Also the ratio of children to teachers. I mean, in New York City, there are Department of health guidelines, but you want to ask that question because that's a really important question to ask. And also you want to probably ask about exmissions. So that's, the famous, the word invented by people who live in New York. It's not in Webster's dictionary yet. Do they help you, guide you in the types of schools for the next step? It's crazy when you're thinking about early childhood, but you really think, okay, my child's going to be there until they're 5. So who's going to help me figure out what to do for kindergarten? So I mean, I'm sure there's other.
I think a sample schedule, being able to provide you with a sample schedule in whatever age group you're interested in, so you can understand. Now I see the philosophy, I see how some activities are brought to life, but what does that look like what's the day-to-day, hour-to-hour that my children are going to be focused on? Good questions.
I love what you shared where, with that web, and how you share it with the parents, because I know, I mean, now my kids are preteen, teenagers, and I still get what'd you do? Nothing. But being able to have that information to spark a conversation is so wonderful. So, I mean, I would certainly ask, how can I connect with my child on a day-to-day basis about what they're learning? Because to me, providing that to parents is such a valuable piece of information in connecting with their children.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say that Vivvi, this is a unique feature of Vivvi, that because we really, we know how important that connection it is between, parents and the school, and we're partners with them. So it is important to ask, how do parents find out what their children are doing?
Terrific, thank you. Jocelyn had a question about children with special needs like autism. Is there a way to find schools that specialize in these type of needs?
So if a child has special needs, and the child has therapists, I mean, it really depends on where your child is on the spectrum. There are some schools that will accept children with special needs with what they called a SEIT, a special education itinerant teacher, and that you'd have to find out. If you have a child who has special needs, you should definitely, talk to the people who are giving you therapy. They are the best people to give you a sense on the kind of schools that would work for your child. I just think that that's like the best resource. I mean, there's something called the Child Development Center in New York. They can provide you a list of schools, but it's such a specific thing for each child that I would go to the providers and ask them what they think would work.
Terrific. And I did put the Vivvi's website in the chat. And I'll also share that as well. But I certainly encourage everyone to go to the website and be able to learn more and connect with you and your team there to be able to speak about their child specifically. Before, these were such great questions, and the two of you are phenomenal. Gretchen, you're going to put me out of business. You're a great mom.
I'm in-house only.
But I would love for each of you just to kind of share maybe, something special with parents that, maybe that you would share with your friend or your family member as, what would a piece of advice, that jewel of advice that you would give? Gretchen, do you want to just start with that? I know I'm putting you on the spot asking that.
No, it's a great, as I'm thinking through, it's a great question. Do not ever be afraid to advocate for yourself or for your child, for your family. I think when I was going to the pediatrician, I was maybe being a little too polite and not saying, I think I need to ask another person, or I need another person to weigh in here. Or when you're on your tours and you're looking for schools and you're finding like, oh shoot, I should have asked that question, or I really do want to understand, I need to communicate with a team member more. I think just being able to know that if you find the right place, they are going to welcome your advocacy, and just never be afraid to ask that question.
I love that. That's really fantastic advice. Thank you, Gretchen. Lynne,
Yeah, of course.
Share your jewel.
I think when you're looking for a school, you need to look for a school that's right for your family. You have friends, you might have friends, children the same age, and you're going to hear a lot of recommendations out there from other people. Take them with a grain of salt and really think about what you and your family, what works for them for, all of these reasons. So the philosophy, the logistics, and also, if you have a sibling, does the school take a second child? Whatever it is. This is a personal family decision that you should be making with, your partner and, and what's best for your child.
That's great advice. I was going to wrap up right now, but Melinda just snuck in a fabulous question, and I want to be able to address it quickly. So if you don't mind, Melinda just wanted to know, what would be a red flag in choosing a school? What's something that can be missed with a first-time parent navigating this chapter?
I'll go first. I think,
uh-oh.
No, not necessarily a red flag, but I will go back to that trusting your gut. And even through a virtual tour, even with a phone call to the head of school, with a phone call to the faculty team, the members, you can get that emotional vibe. And if that's not feeling right for you, then keep scratching that itch, because that, it could just be a gut feeling that you have, but it also could be the way the culture is. And I think, see how people are responding to you. Are they short in their tone? Are they giving you ample amounts of time to answer questions? Do the children seem happy when you're walking past the rooms virtually? Just picking up on those small details. I think if you're finding that it feels cold, follow that a little bit. Lynne, anything you would say?
Yeah, I agree. It's customer service is the first thing. It's that family experience, how people are talking to you. Are they welcoming? Are they available for you after that first call? Because lots of times, we say this, we've given you a lot of information, but come back to us. You might have something that comes up in the middle of the night when you can't sleep, so you want to know that, the school's available to you. So when your child gets in that school, and if something comes up and you have questions, those schools will continue to be available to you to support you and, and your child.
Great advice. What great information to end on. Certainly keep in mind, don't give up. Keep on asking those questions. Advocate for yourself, for your family, for your child. Trust your gut and make the right decision that's personal for your family and your child, and what's right for them. So this has been so valuable, such great information. Thank you so much, Gretchen. Thank you, Lynne. Thank you, Vivvi, for supporting this wonderful conversation. I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us this afternoon. I hope you found it valuable. We will send you an email tomorrow with Vivvi contact information, as well as a link to be able to watch this again. Please feel free to share it with your community. We want to get this great information out there, so share it and share it. And everyone, please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.